Hi friends, it's a beautiful day outside today, so I'm trying to take care of some tasks in the garden. It is still early in the season for a lot of vegetables, especially the vegetables most people think about with gardening, which is tomatoes and beans and those kinds of vegetables. But it's not too early to plant some of the cool, weather-loving vegetables like onions, for example. Right behind me is my onion bed. And then I'm also planting some cabbage, some broccoli, and some Brussels sprouts. Full disclosure, I have never successfully grown broccoli, cabbage, or Brussels sprouts, but I feel like if I don't try, I never will be able to grow them. So every year I do give them an attempt, or at least I've tried to grow broccoli in the past, not cabbage or Brussels sprouts. But this year I'm trying to give that a chance and see if I can grow some, even if it's a small head of cabbage or some Brussels sprouts. Anyway, I'm just, like I said, taking care of some small things that I need to get done in the garden since it's so beautiful outside. One of them is planting asparagus. I have a raised bed that I have probably half filled with asparagus that I planted a couple years ago. And if you're not familiar with asparagus, if you start asparagus from seed, you generally are not supposed to harvest the asparagus for about 3 years. Even if you do try to harvest it, they come the first couple years, they're as thin as a pencil or maybe even the lead of a pencil. They're really tiny. So there's really not much to harvest, but you're supposed to leave it, let the plant basically get strong. And then like the third year you can harvest. Now I'm planting what's called an asparagus crown, and that's usually 1 or 2 year old asparagus plant that has been dug up and then sold. And I purchased this actually at Ace Hardware. If you're anywhere near Ace Hardware today, they actually had, at least at my local Ace Hardware, they had a lot of the onions, potatoes, and asparagus 50% off, as well as some fruit trees. So I did actually pick up myself a pear tree that I'm going to plant. So if you're near one of those stores and if those are vegetables you're interested in with, if that's a vegetable you're interested in planting, then I would suggest you go over and check out your local Ace Hardware. Anyway, I picked up some asparagus and I'm going to show you a picture of it. I kind of ripped the packaging, so this is the asparagus that I planted, or that I'm going to plant, sorry. And it's called the Purple Passion. I have green asparagus, but I don't have this purple variety. And these were actually $6.99. I think the green ones were cheaper, but like I said, I already have some green ones. I do want to grow more because even though I have asparagus planted, I don't get that much, not enough to really have a meal for a couple people. So I'm trying to, this year I told myself I'm going to try to start some more by seed and then see if I can get those planted, and maybe even if I can't get any next year, at least the year after, hopefully I can get some in a year or two. You know, there's that saying, when's the best time to plant a tree? 10 years ago. And when's the next best time to plant a tree? Right now. So that's kind of my philosophy on asparagus. It'd have been nice if I planted it 3 years ago, but I'm planting it today. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get these in the ground, and I'm just going to show you how I go about planting the asparagus crowns. I wanted to show you what the asparagus crowns look like. They actually came in a package, the packaging that I showed you. This packaging, and they were actually bundled up and had rubber bands tied around them, and they were dry. So what I did is put them in a bowl of water, probably for about a half hour, 45 minutes. You do not want to leave them for too long a period of time because they will eventually start rotting in the water. So just a little bit of time before you're about to plant them. But I went ahead and put these in water just to hydrate them a little bit. And I have dug 3 holes for them. I'm going to show you the holes. So these are the holes that I dug. Basically, I dug a hole for them, and then I kind of mounded up dirt inside the hole. And we are going to put our asparagus on top of that. I did that for all of them. There's like a hole dug and then a mound. And I'm going to try to do this with one hand, so it's not going to be so easy to get this nice. But you need to take the root of the asparagus and spread it out. You don't want the root just clumped up together. You want to spread it out like this. So I'm sorry, I'm doing it with one hand, so it's not exactly the best to show you, but you want to spread out the crown, and then you're going to bury the whole thing. We are going to actually bury the whole plant in the ground, but see, I'm going to go ahead and it's okay if that little bit of growth that's there sticks up, but mostly I'm just going to be putting the whole as much dirt on this. It just happens to have that little growth, so I'm going to leave that in there. I mean, leave it above ground, but you don't have to. You can bury it. We're also going to be watering these. As I mentioned, I already hydrated them. Excuse me for trying to do this with one hand. We already hydrated them, but we want to continue to water them, especially until we see some growth coming out of the ground. So this is one. So it doesn't have any kind of growth, so I'm just covering it up completely. Now we've went ahead and planted all three of these, and I will continue to water them until the plant grows. So normally what happens after you plant this is you will get some kind of growth. Like I said, we're going to continue to water it. It might look like a fern. If you're familiar with what a fern looks like, it's going to come up and look like a fern. And asparagus, every year when it first starts to grow, not this asparagus that I just planted, but the asparagus that's been in my garden for a couple of years, when it starts to grow, you'll actually get asparagus spears coming up. Like I said, the first year, first couple of years, maybe the year, first 1 or 2 years, depending on if you've planted crowns that are 1 year old or 2 year olds, will come up looking just like a fern, and it will be skinny, and it might be just as thick as maybe even the lead of a pencil. That would be all it is. And so that is just the plant growing and getting its energy. So you shouldn't cut that fern down. They tell you normally not to cut the fern down at all till the following year. So I cut these ferns down that were in my garden from last year, early this spring. But it's a way that the plant, gets energy for the next year. It gives off a fern. So first what will happen is that an asparagus will come up and you can harvest the asparagus, but eventually the plant does send up a fern, and that fern, or the asparagus spear, comes and becomes a fern. So in the beginning it's a really small plant, but later on, and they tell you to keep those ferns growing because that is a plant getting energy for the next year. So you can harvest some of the asparagus that comes up, but eventually you need to let it become that fern so that it can get energy to come back the next year. So these plants will just probably come up as looking like a fern, and I'll leave them alone. And then next year, if they come up as asparagus, depending on their size, I might or might not harvest them. If they're 2 year asparagus, then I might be able to harvest some. And you shouldn't harvest really all of it, because like I said, you need to let one of the spears actually grow up into a fern so that it can store up energy for the next year. Asparagus is one of those things that I really like because it's a perennial. Once you plant it in your garden, it will come back year after year. It can last 20, 30. I've heard from people that there are 40-year-old asparagus plants. So it's a really good thing to plant in your garden. I actually like anything that's a perennial in the garden. Asparagus is one of them. Rhubarb also is one of them. And it comes back year after year. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that comes back year after year. But definitely those two plants are, also a lot of berry plants. Obviously, those are perennials because they come back. But anyway, rhubarb comes back, asparagus comes back, and it's really great. At least in our climate, I think there's like warm climates, rhubarb doesn't even generally like to grow unless there's like warm weather varieties that might grow down there. But anyway, those are plants that I really like to plant because I like the idea of not having to do anything and then the plant come back by itself. Let me show you a couple of the asparagus plants that are up in my garden already. This is one that is up. I know it looks kind of purple, but it actually will turn green and will not be a purple asparagus. But when it comes up out of the ground, I guess because it's gotten no sunlight, this is what it looks like. I have another one right over here, if you can see, coming out of the ground. Hopefully next year, the year after, we will have some purple asparagus also to add to our collection of asparagus plants. So I'm pretty excited about that. I actually like vegetables that are different colors. I feel like that's one of the benefits of gardening, is that you can grow varieties that are not available at the store. There's so many varieties of vegetables, and I understand why the grocery store, they sell 1 or 2 types of carrots. That's because those are the ones that grow best. They need to grow where a majority of people can eat that. So they can mass produce a huge amount of those carrots. So I get why they're not growing 20 different varieties of them, because some of them are harder to grow. They don't have as much of a yield, and they need to feed a lot of people. So I understand where they're coming from, but that is one of the side benefits of growing your own. I've grown purple peas. I've grown just different color of tomatoes. It's just really nice to see the taste and just the beauty of the different color fruit. So I hope you enjoyed seeing how to plant asparagus and learning a little bit about asparagus plants. If you like this video, I would ask that you would please press the thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel. And I will see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.